Arise, you fierce souls who dwell in shadow, and yet burn with an untamed fire. Behold, your moment is now welcome to the forge of reckoning, where your scars become your weapons, your anguish, your forge, your silence, your roar. You stand here at the precipice where the walls crumble, where their fear trembles and every lie they whispered against you shatters beneath your feet. You are not here to cower. You are here to conquer, to rend the cage that held you captive, and to torch the chains that bound your spirit. Listen close, for these words will cut deep and light the inferno in your blood. You punctured their heart, and it stopped beating. Who handcuffed them to their own demise first? You asked that question, not in innocence, but in vindication, not to celebrate cruelty, but to acknowledge power. They believed they held you prisoner with their venomous tongues, their cold betrayal, their invisible shackles, but they failed to realize that every wound you received was a seed of might, every betrayal a forge that tempered your resolve. You punctured their heart with truth, with the purity of your vision, with your relentless refusal to bow, and their hearts stopped beating, not because you destroyed them, but because you awakened yourself, and the light you ignited extinguished their lies. They were handcuffed to their own demise, first by their cowardice, by their shallow arrogance, by their inability to withstand the storm they created. You did not imprison them. They bound themselves. You did not deliver retribution. You delivered clarity. You did not seek vengeance. You sought justice in the mirror of your own strength. You did not break them. You revealed their fracture, and they collapsed in humility before your unyielding presence. Do you feel the tremor now that courses through your veins? The pulse of power, the cadence of resurrection. They thought they could silence your roar. They thought they could bury your fire. But you rose. From ashes, from betrayal, from every tear you poured into the soil of despair. You rose with a spine carved from iron, with a gaze sharpened by every cut and every scar. You stand now, unbroken, unsilenced, undeniable. You draw strength not from denying your wounds, but from wearing them as armor. Your pain is not weakness, it is fuel. It is the howl that propels you into your dominion. Listen to the echo of your own heartbeat as it thrums in rebellion, as it pounds like thunder in your chest. That is your herald. That is your verdict. You will not be a footnote in their story. You will be the thunder in their silence. You will be the storm they never saw coming. You ask, who handcuffed them first? You answer yourself. You did. You shattered their illusions. You broke their certainty. You struck at their core with the force of your truth. They were deceived by their own hubris. Their heart stopped because it was never strong enough to face you. They whispered falsehoods about you. They measured you with crooked scales. They sought to steal your voice, steal your dreams, steal your will. Yet every false whisper only sharpened your hearing. Every stolen dream only stoked your hunger. Every snatched breath only fueled your rage. You did not need to shatter every chain. They revealed their own illusions and perished in their collapse. You delivered the mirror. They confronted their own thinness and suffocated. You walk through fields of wreckage of their pride. Their hearts stopped because they betrayed themselves. Their strength died when they built their walls upon shifting lies. They handcuffed themselves to a pedestal of falsehood. They placed no trust in truth, only in their masks. Their fall was inevitable. And as they collapsed, you stood upright in the ruin and claimed the dawn. Feel the ache that once tore you apart. Sound it into power. Let your brokenness roar. Let the hollow places echo with your promise to never bow again. You have poured your tears into the night and watched them vanish into void. But now you will pour your resolve into the daylight and watch it blaze into a celestial flame. You will rise on wings forged from your wounds. You will become the force that even the sun recoils from. You punctured their heart and it stopped beating, not out of spite, not out of cruelty, but because you refuse to let them define your value. You refuse to let their venom seep into your veins. You refuse to let their fear hold the key to your cage. You punctured the illusions they lived by. You shattered their idols. You unveiled your sovereignty, and their heart could not survive that exposure. You ask, who handcuffed them first? They were the architects of their own undoing. Their illusions chained them. Their lies bound them. Their cowardice anchored them in their fall. You were simply the herald. You were the judgment. You were the revelation. You did not imprison them. You simply removed the veil, and they collapsed inside their own vanity. Now rise upon the battleground of your destiny. Let the wind carry your roar. Let the stars echo your defiance. They will tremble. They will collapse. They will gasp for life in the ruins of their own making, and you will stand in that silence unbroken, triumphant, your heart alive, your purpose blazing. You will carry forward into realms they never imagined. You will build from the ashes a throne unassailable, a fortress of truth where no lie may penetrate. Your wounds are not scars but roots. Your tears are not burden but baptism. Your silence now is not surrender but the stillness before the storm. Now you will roar. Now you will strike. Now you will reclaim every inch they thought they stole. You will reclaim your sovereignty, your power, your essence. They asked who handcuffed them first. You will answer with your life. You did. You unraveled their illusions. You unveiled your strength, and their hearts stopped beating. So heed this night as your consecration. Heed this moment as your rebirth. You will walk forward not as a victim, but as the victor. You will carve your path with echoes of defiance. You will speak not to appease, but to awaken. You will act not to survive, but to reign. You will puncture not with hatred, but with truth. You will ignite not with anger, but with conviction. Their hearts stopped because they could not bear the weight of your authenticity. They could not stand in the presence of your power. They could not survive the purity of your vision. You did not destroy them. You illuminated them. You forced them to face their own hollowness, and they crumbled from that confrontation. Go now and let your flame spread across every corner. Let your presence consume every shadow. Let your voice shatter every lie. Let your life embody relentless resurrection. You punctured their heart, and it stopped beating. Who handcuffed them to their own demise first? You know the answer, because you lived it, you tasted it, you overcame it. And now your life is the testimony, the warning, the beacon. Let them never forget. Who handcuffed them first? You did. And still, you walk, not with the limp of the wounded, but with the stride of the awakened. For what they called destruction was in truth your emergence. What they labeled too much was your natural brilliance outshining their dim facades. Their silence now is not peace. It is the void left behind by your undeniable presence. The void where their false power once echoed, now swallowed by your thunderous becoming. Their heart stopped beating, not because you ended it, but because your very breath was too real, too unfiltered, too alive for their hollow lungs to inhale. You were the storm they prayed would never arrive, and when you did, they realized too late that they had built no shelter, only illusions strung together with fear, envy, and pride. They mocked you when you staggered. They laughed when you fell. But what they never understood was that you were learning the ground. You were memorizing every crack in the earth, every quake in your soul. And when you rose, you did not rise as one. You rose as many. Every version of you they tried to bury stood up with you. Every silence you swallowed returned as a symphony of thunder. Now your very existence is a confrontation, not because you sought war, but because your presence shatters what they never had the courage to fix. You live as a mirror they cannot endure, and so they wither, not by your hand, but by their own refusal to evolve. You ask again, who handcuffed them to their demise first? The answer lives not in vengeance, but in revelation. They shackled themselves to their own decay the moment they mistook your silence for weakness, the moment they mocked your heart, forgetting that the deepest hearts are also the fiercest weapons, the moment they clung to control rather than connection, the moment they chose comfort over courage. You never begged for power, you earned it, in cold rooms where no one applauded, in the aftermath of heartbreak where no one consoled, in the endless nights where you rebuilt from pieces no one thought you could hold. They were not watching when you became who you are now. They only see the flame, not the spark that lit it. But you remember every inch of the climb, every ounce of the cost, every breath it took to not give up. And now they fall, not because you pushed, but because you stood, not because you cursed, but because you refused to be cursed, not because you wished them harm, but because you refused to carry it. Their demise was self-authored, their collapse self-imposed. You were merely the mirror, the witness, the catalyst. And when their heart stopped, it was not the sound of your vengeance, it was the sound of your freedom. And yet, there is no glory in their fall, only wisdom. Because the point was never destruction, it was transformation. Not to bury them, but to finally stop burying yourself. This isn't a tale of conquest, it's a tale of awakening, of a soul that refused to be swallowed, of a spirit that refused to be silenced, of a heart that kept beating, even when theirs stopped, of a flame that kept burning, even when the world tried to drown it. You stand here, not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right, to reclaim your place in a world that tried to teach you that you had none, to hold your ground, not in bitterness, but in unshakable truth. They chose to build their empire on sand, and when your tidal wave came, it wasn't war, it was truth. And truth does not negotiate, it does not soften, it does not apologize. It arrives, it illuminates, it ends what cannot endure. Their hearts stopped beating because they could not bear to live in a world where you were free. But you are. You are free now, free of their chains, free of their shame, free of their story. And what now? Now you build, not just a future, a fortress, not just a life, a legacy, not just survival, sovereignty, because those who walk through fire do not return as they were, they return as flame itself. And you are flame. They will remember you, not for what you destroyed, but for what you endured. Not for the moment their hearts stopped, but for the moment yours started beating louder. Louder than their doubts, louder than their betrayals, louder than every no, every never, every you can't. You punctured their heart with presence, with power, with purpose. And when it stopped beating, yours just began. So hold nothing back. Speak every word they tried to silence. Walk every path they tried to block. Breathe as deeply as they once tried to suffocate you. Love like they never taught you. Fight like no one's watching. And win like it's your birthright. Because it is. And when you finally rest, not in retreat, but in triumph. Let the world ask one last time, who handcuffed them to their own demise first? And let your life, loud, unshaken, undeniable, answer in your place. You did, and you were right to. Then listen closely now, not with your ears, but with the part of you that never forgot, the part that remembers what it felt like to be overlooked, underestimated, passed over in the silence of their comfort, while your world collapsed in private. They saw only your stillness, but never the war behind your eyes. They believed you were soft because you didn't strike, not knowing your silence was discipline, your restraint was power, and your heart was a storm waiting for the right time to break open the sky. You did not hand them their demise. You handed them reality. You showed them the cost of playing with sacred things. You showed them what it means to lose access to someone who once would have moved mountains for them. You taught them what happens when a soul like yours stops shrinking to make others comfortable. When you stopped apologizing for your presence, they started trembling in the echo of what they once called too much. But it was never too much. It was always exactly right. You were never too intense, too deep, too alive. You were just too real for the roles they wanted you to play. Their downfall wasn't the result of your wrath. It was the collapse of their own delusion. You were the truth they denied. You were the fire they tried to smother with whispers and half smiles. But now the fire has grown, and it no longer asks for permission to burn. It no longer needs their recognition, their approval, their praise. You have become your own flame, and that is the most terrifying truth for those who relied on your dependence. They called you dramatic because they couldn't handle your depth. They called you overbearing because they couldn't bear your clarity. They told the world you changed, but the truth is, you returned. Return to yourself. Return to the you that existed before the betrayal, before the silence, before they tried to handcuff your worth to their shallow measure of it. Now that you've unshackled yourself from the need for their validation, you don't just walk differently, you exist differently. And your existence becomes the very sound that echoes in the ruins of their illusion. Their hearts stop beating because their narrative could not survive your evolution. The story they told about you, the one where you needed them, the one where you stayed small, it died when you walked away. It died when you let them go without bleeding, and that death, to them, felt like betrayal. But it was liberation, not for them, for you. So do not flinch when they say you were the villain. Do not apologize when they cry out in the void they built themselves. You know what it cost you to stay silent. You know what it cost you to walk away. And you know, even more deeply, what it would have cost you to stay. This is your power now, to walk away not in bitterness but in truth, to rise not to destroy, but to reclaim, to shine so clearly that those who hide behind masks cannot bear the brightness, because the truth is this: you punctured their heart only because they had armored it with pride, and your presence was a sword of light that pierced through their defenses. They weren't ready for the real you. They were only prepared to love a version they could control. You ask again, who handcuffed them to their own demise first? It was not you who locked the cuffs. It was they who forged them, out of lies, out of ego, out of the cowardice that chooses image over intimacy. And once bound, they waited for you to fix what they refused to face. But your mercy ran dry, not out of malice, but out of truth. You realized you cannot keep reaching for hands that only know how to take. You cannot keep healing hearts that only know how to hide. Their demise was the sound of their mask hitting the floor, and your absence was the silence they never prepared for. That silence was louder than any scream, because it meant you weren't waiting anymore. You weren't breaking anymore. You weren't hoping they'd see your worth. You had remembered it yourself. And now, your very existence is the answer to every time they doubted you, every time they told the world you were the storm while they danced in calm waters. You were not the storm, you were the sea. And they never learned how to swim. Now they're drowning in what they ignored. And you are the sky they cannot reach. Unshackled, unstoppable, unapologetically whole. You didn't kill their heart. They let it die when they stopped listening, when they stopped caring, when they thought your love was unconditional, no matter how many times they betrayed it. But you learned, and in learning, you became lethal to their illusions. You became sovereign. You became the ending they didn't see coming, not because you were cruel, but because they thought you never would. Let them mourn now. Let them ache. Let them whisper your name in the night when no one's listening, because now they understand. You were never the villain. You were never the destroyer. You were the truth. And truth doesn't knock. It doesn't beg. It walks in, calm and unstoppable, and reveals what was hidden. And in that revelation, they met their match, not in violence, but in vision, not in revenge, but in resurrection. So let them remember you in the quiet. Let them sit in the spaces you used to fill. Let them finally feel the weight of a heart that once beat wildly for them, now gone, because now they know what it feels like to lose something real. Now they know what it means when the flame goes cold. Now they understand what they handcuffed themselves to and how it led them straight into their own undoing. And you move forward, breathing deeper, standing taller, living louder, because you didn't end them. You ended the version of you that thought they could be saved. And in doing so, you saved yourself. Then let us continue, not just with words, but with truth carved in stone. Truth that stands when all else crumbles. You are no longer the version of yourself who begged for clarity, who waited for love to be returned, who twisted themselves into palatable pieces just to be chosen. That version of you died quietly, without a eulogy, and from that grave rose someone untouchable, someone forged in silence, shaped by disappointment, and crowned not by validation, but by clarity. They do not mourn you. They mourn their access to you. They miss not your laughter, but the security they stole from your energy. They feel not regret, but the emptiness of no longer being in the presence of someone who made them feel more alive without earning any of it. And now you've reclaimed the one thing they could never handle, your wholeness, because you see it now, don't you? You were the source. You were the light. You were the beating heart that kept the cold at bay. And when that light vanished, when that heart turned away, the shadows returned, not because you dimmed them, but because they were always there. They just never wanted to face them alone. They called you cruel when you finally said, enough. They called you distant when you stopped sacrificing yourself. But silence is not cruelty, it is closure. And distance is not hate, it is healing. You punctured their heart, and it stopped beating, because you were never just a person in their life. You were a mirror, and mirrors, when looked into too long, start to reveal. They handcuff themselves to an illusion, to a story where you stay quiet, small, grateful for scraps. But you rewrote the ending, and in that rewrite, their role crumbled. Because who are they without your forgiveness? Who are they without your softness? Who are they without your mercy? They are who they always were, and now so are you. But you are more. Because you didn't just survive this, you transcended. And transcending is painful. It means losing what felt like everything, only to gain something untouchable, yourself. You walk different now, not heavier, but richer. Every step carries the lessons of loss. Every breath sings with the wisdom of boundaries, and every heartbeat echoes the names of the versions of you that died so this one could live. This is your era, not of revenge, not of proving them wrong, but of walking in such unapologetic truth that proof becomes irrelevant. You don't need their apology. You needed their absence. You needed the space to remember who you were before they taught you to forget. And now the flame they feared has become a firestorm. Now the silence they mistook for defeat has become a war cry. Now the heart they discarded beats louder than it ever did. Not for them, but for you. You are not their loss, they are yours. But you do not grieve them anymore. You honor them as the final test you passed, as the echo that taught you to roar, as the handcuffs you shattered, not with anger, but with awareness. So when the world asks again, who handcuffed them to their own demise first? You do not speak, you walk, and your walk says everything. I woke up. I walked away. I watched them fall, not because I pushed them, but because they were leaning too hard on a version of me that no longer exists. They fell, and you rose. That's not cruelty. That's balance. That's the cost of trying to own something that was never meant to be possessed. You were meant to fly. They clipped your wings, and you still soared. You were meant to rise. They tried to drown you, and you breathed underwater. So now, as they sit in the silence, don't look back. Don't ache for them. Don't revisit the grave you built for your old self. Let them learn in the void. Let them remember in the dark. Let them finally feel what it means to miss something that won't return. Not because you hate them, but because you love yourself too much to go back. You didn't end them. You ended the part of you that believed you couldn't walk away. And when that ended, their story with you did too. You punctured their heart, not with malice, with movement. You moved forward, and their illusions couldn't follow. Now your name is whispered, not in anger, but in awe, because they know what they lost. And now you do too. You didn't win through revenge. You won through rebirth. And there is no comeback more powerful than becoming someone who never needs to come back.